in that area as well in Venezuela. So we'll see how it goes there. Uh, like at this point, it's like obviously like it's against international law and even U.S. law, but it never stopped anyone in the West. The laws never uh, were a problem for the Western leaders. They're easy to make them and easy to break them. So the only laws only there when it's convenient for the West. If it's not convenient, then there are no laws. Uh, it's a rules-based order when we make the rules, and the rules change as the situation unfolds. Anyway, so we'll see how that goes. China is developing fast, and BRICS is developing fast and developing alternative payment systems that don't involve dollar in any way. So the dollar's sort of positioning is falling in the world as a reserve currency. Yeah, and they're starting to sell U.S. bonds and whatnot. China and Japan are starting to reduce their sort of reserve of U.S. bonds and dollars in favor for the gold and silver, which is going through the roof. So right now they're kind of being sustained by the well, like smart coin, whatever crypto coin markets, where they pushing that the dollar onto uh, as a way for people to escape hyperinflation within their own currencies in like different parts of the world, like in Latin America, for example. So the people would like buy the smart coins which are backed by dollar, but that's only temporary solution. So if dollar falls worldwide from like it's 60% of the world trade based on dollar to say like 40%, then it will be like significant loss of the dollar status as a world's reserve currency. And so everyone recognizing that that's about to happen, so everyone is desperately trying to figure out alternative means of how they could do trade if that happens. It's not easy because all those fiat currencies are kind of pegged on the value of dollar. So I'm not an economist, but I see there's a lot of sort of problems with how you're gonna develop your uh, sovereign monetary policies. Uh, so that's what the BRICS is trying to figure out within themselves. So, uh, so next year, 2026. So we should see more development in that area, and it doesn't mean that there will be some kind of BRICS currency, uh, but it will mean that there will be more different options for countries to do trade without US dollar. So, and of course, that takes great profit away from America, uh, who benefit from countries using dollar in their trade. Uh, and everything going channeled through their markets, so they know who is selling what, when, and what price. And now they don't know any of that because it's happening somewhere else, and they have no access to that information, nor they can influence in any way. So, so on one side they're connected, as it's like the same club, and then just playing games on two different sides and whatnot. And some things they agree on, some things they disagree on, and then they're fighting between for who is going to control what part of the world, and finance and markets and resources, commodities, whatnot. But it seems to me it's all based under the Maritime Admiralty Law, Universal Commerce Code, and all the Vatican uh, jurisdiction over the human souls, yeah, or declared lost at sea, and in whose name the strawman identity is created, and connected to the sovereign fund that then Vatican manages on behalf of those lost souls who are basically walking dead corporations, your first and last name, and all in capital letters, like corpse, and all that jazz. So anyway, the uh, so they are unified about a lot of things, and divisions are more superficial than real. But the wars are real. Like the people are dying, like because the chess game that they play with real people, real assets, real companies, real countries, and so like. Uh, but the idea is that they already determined the outcome somewhere at the high level. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna move these people there. We're gonna change these borders. We're gonna, bring up this region. We're gonna bring down that region. So all those decisions already made, and now the rest is just a feeder of war. That's why they call it feeder of war. It's kind of like human sacrifice has been allocated to be performed to secure that future that they already set for themselves, their goals. So, and and by the looks of it, that the new world order that's being formed, it's going to be, well, obviously United States, in Russia, in China, in India, of course, and uh, well, yeah, Japan, sure, why not? Bring it in. Uh, then Indonesia. Uh, Africa is going to be future of the world. There was the youngest population in there, uh, and a lot of mineral resources, of course. And since they kind of skipped the industrial age, so they have a lot of intact in environmental uh, conditions that they can bypass this industrialization uh, period and go right into the digital age with more modern technologies, uh, which could like work out in their interest to a great extent. So obviously Sahel region is like the Burkina Faso and all that, and we like move for independence within North Africa, and then well across all Africa at this point. There's a massive kind of push for decolonization and independence kind of happening, and getting rid of the IMF and World Bank and go with BRICS kind of system of payments in their national currencies, and without any kind of political rhetoric or the preaching about democracy and whatnot and rules-based order. What something the new U.S. strategy indicates that they don't care about the rhetoric anymore and polemics, so the democracy and whatnot and values. They just want to focus on pure business and making money, uh, which is realistic and correct approach. Uh, no need to impose on people your views. You know what works in US is not going to work in China. The Chinese form of sort of communism was Chinese characteristics is not going to work for US or other places. So it's like some places are good with the presidential democracy, some more like republican, some more like federation states, kind of what not some parliamentary systems or whatever. There are different forms of governments. Like I don't know how many there are like forms of governments, but like there's not really a predominant like a particular one form of government that is everybody is using. No, everyone's using. Some are monarchies, like after U.S. Sort of brought democracy, so-called, to Libya. You know, and now it's turned into like open slave markets there. So like. Even they can call it something and can have different brand names, but ultimately, in practice, it could be something completely different. Like so, they called it communism in Soviet Union, but it wasn't communist. It was just like centralized control of the sort of particular oligarchy of the sort of communist party apparatus. So it's just the same thing under different pretense. You know. Yeah, initially it was sort of like during the early days of revolution, you had like massive kind of cultural like what do you call it, national support, and then eventually the new oligarchy developed, and same old kind of top-down regimes evolved during like Stalin, well, Lenin, Stalin, whatever, and thereafter times, which were not different in their scope and power as the imperial like rule of the tsars. You know, especially comparing Stalin, you know, who was like initially he was the tsar's secret police. He was also Jewish. You know, they're all Jewish. Trotsky, Lenin was Jewish. So most of like 90% of like Soviet apparatus in the early revolutionary days were like all Jewish. So it's Chinese Maoist period. You know, Mao had all his Jewish advisors. And so. Anyway, so the Stalin was the British secret police after he was recruited by British secret police, and he was during Lenin. He was in the background, kind of waiting his time. In the last days of Lenin, when he was sick, he was supposedly like being poisoned. Stalin knew he would die soon, and so he was slept outside of Lenin's room, waiting for him to die. I think that's Smolny. Anyway, so Lenin was the German Masons, yeah. So Stalin was the British Masons recruited, and Lenin was German Masons. It was German school, like the Rothschilds. They funded all the early Bolshevik revolutions, like 1905, 1917, and then it was like German army that fought the White Army, and became the like Red Army. So it was German Masons who mainly did the coup, the color revolution in Russia, and then Stalin, was British. They were basically fighting the German Masons to take over control, wrestle control of young Soviet Union out of the German Masons. So it's an old sort of conflict between British and German establishments. Yeah. So and then my understanding is that then Stalin kind of went rogue and kind of became like paranoid and start to like exterminating even his own like biggest supporters. He started to sending them all to gulags, and then God knows how many people perished during the 1937 cleansings and so on. We'll never probably know, but like when Stalin started cleansing the top parts of the government in the Soviet Union, the the paranoia kind of spilled over to the lower levels of society because people at the time lived in the communal apartments. It would be like several families sharing one flat with like sharing a bathroom and a kitchen and so on. It's very, tightly knit community and so on. So whenever opportunity presented to get rid of your neighbors, people used it. And so with a rising sort of uh, repressions and what do you call it, chistki, like cleansing of the enemies of the state. The people start to report on their neighbors to the authorities. Oh, my neighbor listens to Voice of America, or they said something about Soviet party or whatever. So they'll report, and the authorities, they were in dilemma. So if they didn't take action on that report, they could have themselves been implicated of like covering it up, and which happened. And after that, they would rather take an action and arrest those people who were reported on, instead of rather than just ignore it, because if they ignore it, they could be themselves blamed. And that's kind of snowballed into this massive wave of persecutions that some say took like tens of millions of people. Anyway, so that's that. And what else we haven't covered yet? Well, we covered pretty much everything to this point. Obviously, I don't expect Zelensky regime last very long in Ukraine. So they'll have to have their elections and create new some kind of form of government and new Rada and new presidency and so on, and new constitution they have to, or revert back to the original their founding constitution after the fall of the Soviet Union, which guaranteed rights for its Russian-speaking population, which they blatantly went against, and after 2014 color revolution, the coup, uh, junta in Kiev, they started persecuting Russian-speaking populations, outlawed Russian language, outlawed Russian Orthodox Church, outlawed all the opposition parties, outlawed all the media and so on, and free speech and whatnot, and the horrible crimes against, peaceful civil populations of Donbass and other regions were committed, using military. And so Russia tried to find peaceful ways for 8 years, from 2014 to 2022, figure out how to end this conflict. And once they realized that the West had no intention of ending it, and they were trying to just win some time in order to rearm Ukraine and prepare it for war with Russia, Russia knew that there was some plans of Ukrainian authorities to join NATO, which were declared openly, and bring in nuclear weapons or whatnot, and there were already biolabs and whatnot, other stuff set up and in Ukraine. And so anyway, then special military operation initiated, which is surgical, very careful way of dealing with this situation. That's what Russia wants, like addressing root causes of the conflict. They want like denazification, demilitarization, making Ukraine neutral again, restoring rights of the Russian-speaking population and Russian Orthodox Church and so on. Recognition of Russian iconic traditional lands as part of Russian, which it is. They had referendum, they voted, and it's all by the book and legal, and it's part of Russian constitution as well. So those lands are rightfully Russian territory. But it's not enough for Russia to recognize it. So Russia wants it to be recognized at the Security Council, by all legal, on all legal levels, and probably get that, and it will cut off Ukraine from the sea, and then that would make Ukraine unviable as a state anymore. So at that point, the whole question, will Ukraine survive as a state, is a question, because maybe the rest of that western parts would be split between Poland and Hungary, whatever else. Maybe some American companies like BlackRock will take control over some aspects of it. We'll see how that's gonna unfold, but it looks like the conflict in Ukraine would be solved by military means, and Russia will be dictating the position of conditions of surrender, and they'll probably go legally after various parties who were involved and demand extradition from various states that harbors them. Because Russian legal kind of focus is very strong, and they're very determined, and they intend to use full sort of weight of the law. Anyway, could there be another pandemic? They're talking about it. Ursula von der Crazy said something about some next big virus hitting, but nobody after that commented or said anything about it. So who knows? Maybe she spoke too early, and they're not ready yet to go with it. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But one thing is for sure is that the whatever the solutions they provide, It's like, Hegelian dialectics, problem, reaction, solution. You'll create a problem and create the reaction, hysteria, and then provide a solution. Like you take that, inject that, do that. So to be safe, I personally stay away from all of that. Um, so what we can do is to mind our levels of consumptions. So like if we're gonna eat, make sure you eat what you need to eat, and that's good quality. That is actually provides benefit to your body, not stresses your body with toxins and pollutants that it needs to then get rid of and whatnot. So like to fast once in a while is good, at least like 1 day a week. Pick a day and just fast. Or when your moon goes through your sun sign, everybody has different period. Like I'm Sagittarius, so when there's the moon passing through the sign of Sagittarius, about 3 days a month. That's my personal time when Christos oil is rising up the spine into the solar plexus. That's your Virgo, melaphagia man, yeah. Aries head, Virgo is your solar plexus, yeah. Scorpio is your generative organs, and then like and so on. Yeah. So it's a Bethlehem. So that's once a month when the moon is in your sun sign, your birth sun sign. Then it's a bit of the oil that is stored at your Coptic, like 5 fuse bones at your forming this chalice of the tailbone. That's where the brain deposited cerebrospinal fluid inside that chalice. Yeah. And then when the moon passing through your sun sign, it pulls some of that like oil, like it's like crystallized oil. But as it pulls it, it becomes more viscous and liquid. And when it deposits here, it's kind of like this oily texture. So that's why Christos means anointed, as a reference to that oil. And then it starts that camel path. It's like camel going for the eye of a needle. Yeah. So eye of a needle, your pineal gland, and it's camel path is your final journey from Bethlehem or the Virgo, where the Christ is born every month. So you have 12 Christs born a year within you. And then it starts journey up, and then being crucified on passing the vagus nerve, and then gets absorbed by the Brahma cave, where it stays for 3 days in a cave. It's your inner cave inside the fucking thing. Uh, and then uh, and then it gets transformed. It becomes more like from oil to more like gas, and then it gets absorbed by pineal pituitary glands and hypothalamus, and which excrete their own, like the presence of the three wise men, serotonin, melatonin, and dopamine, or the land of milk and honey. So that's that's our inner crystals, and with that you have higher awareness, you know, sort of like being connected to your higher consciousness, or also called Christ consciousness, and so on. That happens with that sort of biological processes inside that are triggered and corresponding with the external exoteric, the solar and lunar passages outside. And so it's kind of interconnected. What's happening outside infecting us inside, and so on. So on that word, I want to congratulate everybody with a happy new solar year. That's according to my calendar, and I blame Vyacheslav Kulanov for that. That starts on 24th of December, as far as I understand. And the sun starts to travel back up again. And well, yeah, and I think that the whole Easter and Christmas should be switched because, like, the birth of Christ, it's more like, to me, it's more like coming of spring, coming of new year, new agricultural year, new warmth, new sun. That's when the sort of the sun passing from the equator and moving into the north of the equator territory, bringing with it spring and summertime. So yeah, it makes sense because the Aries in Melophagia, yeah, it's the first sign of zodiac and also represents the head. That represents April months. April Fools. That's your first month of the year, a zodiac year. Pisces being the last month, or Ophiuchus, depending if you follow solar or lunar. So anyway, so in biblical terms, into the ecclesiastical calendar, you have like Nisan, which is like Babylonian name for the biblical months, which are numerical. The biblical months originally are referred to by numbers, like first month, second month, third month. So, with the first month being in the spring, yeah, that month of Nisan, yeah, and what is known as Rosh Hashanah or the Jewish New Year, it's actually like seventh month in ecclesiastical calendar, which is in September, and the and that means Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year. Yeah, but it's actually a Babylonian harvest festival, and all the trumpet and all the what the ceremony, the Jews blowing horns and stuff on that day, like Yom Teruah. It's remnants of the coronation ceremony that, from my understanding, that Akhenaten had during his time when he became king, and he had this coronation ceremony, and so this descendants of that time from Akhenaten still celebrate that by recreating those customs. So